Due to the surreal nature of the story that is presented, I feel a quote from Mark Twain bears repeating. Truth is stranger than fiction, but it is because fiction is obliged to stick to the possibilities. Truth is not.
I've always been a fan of history, and I love the history here in downtown. And the story of the homes where the founder of the First Alabama Bank built 3 homes, and he built them for 3 of his daughters, and they all exactly the same. And my mother used to take piano lessons in one of the homes there, and I remember as a kid she'd tell me stories about how the house was haunted when she would come. I guess when I closed on my first home I ever bought, they did the closing for me there. And when I was there, they was telling me ghost stories. And as soon as I walked in, I could feel the presence at that time. I could feel that there was something there. And I think I asked the lady, and she started laughing and said, yeah, it's haunted. And she went on to telling the stories about the lady that used to teach piano that taught my mother now haunts the place. She's seen many times on the steps in the old home. And she was telling different stories, different experiences they had. And I was just thinking, wow, I'd love to investigate that place. And that's before I ever even formed Southern Paranormal Researchers. I mean, we was doing this kind of on our own some, but like we did since a kid, but before we formed Southern Paranormal Researchers. Then come around about several years later when I formed the team, I always had the place in the back of my mind that I wanted to investigate it. And we finally had some downtime set, and I got my case manager to contact him, see can we come in and investigate. And as soon as we called in, they said, absolutely, can you come today? And we pretty much said, well, how about we just set up a meeting? We'll come meet with you early Saturday, and we'll just investigate it Saturday night. And they said, great, come on. Well, it was a large home. It's 2 stories. I figured it would be a good opportunity to bring my whole team in, train them, get them set. I guess the whole basis of that story and where we at from where I am at that point is I've always really been kind of confident in my abilities and who I was and what I've known because of my background with my grandmother, where I've come from. Been investigating since we was kids. So is David Humphrey and Burnett. We've been doing this since we was kids. And I was always extremely confident that I could handle anything. I was aware of it. And I was just almost overconfident at that time. We set the investigation up, and that night we came in. Our team got there. We got there a little bit early, and we went in and met with the owners. And we sat in the living room, and it was myself and several others while we did the initial interviews. And then they was talking to us, and they was telling us about some of the activities and stories of the home, what they experienced, and then they told us, well, the family pretty much stayed the home until the lady that taught piano passed away. Then it became an antique store. It stayed an antique store for several years, and then they bought it from them and turned it into their law firm. The antique store, when they bought it from the antique store, the owner actually told them that there's a picture hanging on the wall, and it's a World War I cavalry officer. Had the leggings, the whole 9 yard, very blank stare, and one of the old oval picture frames. He informed the owners, the attorneys, his attorney and his wife, that they that he sold that photo two different occasions. One time it came back and they just told him it's horrible luck and they didn't want it and they wanted a refund. The second time, the people bought the photos and they pulled out and left, and they got T-boned up the road. And after they got out of the hospital, they returned the photograph to them. And the owner that moved out with his antique, he didn't want the photo. So he left the photo with them. And he told them, it's just rumor, it's bad luck, and he didn't want it. Well, the first thing the couple did is they actually took the photo out of the home, renovated it, and pretty much put it in the shed out back. They started having a lot of financial problems, a lot of things going on personal with them. They started arguing a lot. This is an older couple that have been married for a long, long time, well known in the community. So they started fussing and arguing a lot. And one of the things you always look for is keywords and their emotions. And she told me to the point that that they ended up having to put the picture back into the home and hang it on the wall. His secretary and her assistant, it's actually in their job duties that every day when they come in to office, they come in, They take that picture of that World War I soldier off the wall, and they hang him in the closet on a hook specially made for him. They would hang another picture. And before they leave every day, one of them will take the soldier out of the closet, hang him back on the wall, and switch photos. They do it every day. Every day that office is open, they're doing it. Well, the attorney went to show some of the other team members around, and his wife looked at us and said, I believe in all this stuff. I'm born and raised here. She's a typical old Southern lady with money, if you can picture that type of lady. And she leaned over, and I really, it's one of those things that you just feel the sincerity and the energy about it. And she leaned over, and she said, one night, me and she gave the attorney's name, that we had an argument, and I thought I'd just show him, and I would just leave, and I'd just come here and spend the night since we bought the house, and I'll just sleep on the couch. And she said she walked in, and she looked over at me and said, "This house is wicked. There's something wicked about it." And I couldn't stay, and she pretty much left it at that. Our team, she came back in, and the entire time when I got out that night, you always look for signs, and the subtle signs is always there. As I got there, ever since I can remember, I always can feel energy. There's never a time that I don't feel energy, and the only time to my recollection where I can really say I don't feel anything was that night when I got out of that car. I just didn't feel it. And I almost bathed in it. It's just like something I've never felt before. It was a calmness, just a dullness of clear air around me. Completely dull the entire time, ignored the signs. As we went outside to get our equipment and get ready to get set up, the door actually shut on us and locked. And no one did it. And it's a turn lock. Somebody actually turned on it. And that was one thing happened. I completely disregarded it, just due to the fact because I was focused on I'm not feeling anything. I just want to kind of just enjoy the night. We was planning to investigate the entire house, and another firm actually operates in the upstairs. And the attorney did not think he had the key, and he thought he had it, and it turned out he didn't. So Greg sent Burnett upstairs to check the door, and the door didn't open. It was locked. So we went on and set up, and I was like, wow, we got a lot of people. I'm just going to sit down here in the parlor area and just kind of relax and just let everybody do the investigations. While we got there, Sarah Bell, one of our investigators, ran upstairs to set a mic up, and she decided just to turn the doorknob, and when she did, the door opened, so it was unlocked now. So we had the ability to investigate all over the house. A lot of the activity was reported on the staircase, downstairs in the parlor area, piano playing, the whole nine. Throughout the investigation, I just didn't feel anything. I just wanted to sit there and chill and just kind of let everybody kind of enjoy themselves. Throughout the night, I continued to ignore signs of the doors being locked, the little subtle things that you look for in this field. One of the cool things about it that I still kept disregarding that as animal can be explained is every time I went upstairs, you could hear something inside the fireplace that would run upstairs. Next thing you know, when I went downstairs, you can hear it run downstairs. Just kind of went back and forth inside the walls, so it could be an animal. We would hear the scratching. It was January 20th. I remember it like it was yesterday. When you come into the home, at different points it was cool, but you'd walk to extreme just heat. And I just assumed that, it's something to do with the heat. I just completely just kind of disregarded it. We had different instances throughout the night. At one point, myself, David, and Greg was downstairs. And I was just letting everybody enjoy themselves and investigate. And we were sitting downstairs in one of the back offices of the attorneys. In this private areas who wouldn't disturb anybody. And just kind of sitting there chilling and talking. And the house had a wraparound porch. And this was probably about 3.5 hours into the investigation. And when we did, actually a body of somebody walked around the porch. We assumed it was one of our investigators. We didn't know who was outside, how they got outside. And when we looked, we didn't see them anymore. All I can tell you is there was definitely somebody on that porch, without a doubt. And that house started to change a little bit. And then at that point, a lot of the little signs I start replaying, have I messed up? Is there something more here? Is there a little more to it? So we went back to that office. We sat there, and during that time period, I always say Satan shouts and angels whispers, and I'm starting to feel that. I can now hear the whispers. I've ignored this stuff. Hadn't checked into it. I hadn't prepared properly. I hadn't got my team warned in enough. And during that time period, I got Sarah Bell came downstairs and said, "Man, you got to get up here. Something's just not right. Something is just not right." We have a lot of people that had strong faith, but Sarah Bell was special. She had a really strong faith in God. And that's really important, and she knew it wasn't right. Then me and Greg and David made our way upstairs, and while we made our way upstairs, we was met by my mother and two of our investigators. And they stopped us in our tracks, started telling us that Burnett has been communicating with a little boy. They're going to try to get him to cross over, and while they was doing so, one of our investigators was scratched. A lot of times in this field, you hear people say, "Oh, I scratched. I got a burning sensation on my back, on my leg," while you're doing the investigations. And you see it so much, you hear it so much, you disregard it. You don't really let that kind of take in effect. You say, "Okay, well, let me see it." And I'm used to seeing the light red or something that you're kind of commonly seeing in this field. When I did, the young lady actually had, the perfect way you can describe it, you got thumbtack. Actually, she had 3 thumbtacks, and they was probably about an inch apart. This went down from her shoulder blade all the way across like a swoosh around her back, and it was bleeding. Just had the blood seep through. And while they was doing that, I just kept feeling that we was being distracted, just trying to keep us out of that hallway. And I guess, to be honest, that night, I just completely just was in shock that I dropped the ball as the head person by ignoring all these signs and being too confident in me and not the ability God gives me. And that's why so many times you hear me that it's not me, God gives this to me. This is all me, because it was all me in my mind until that night, and I realized it wasn't. And I felt everybody when you look at things that way. And I remember Greg kind of pushed his way in because he picked up on it before I did. And we made our way inside. When I walked in, Burnett's one of my trusted friends. We've grown up together. My grandmother trusted him. He very much knew my background, as him and Hump did. And Mike knew this. Mike knew these things. When I looked at Mike, I knew it wasn't Mike. Mike was not himself. He was completely pale. The room was completely airtight in there, and things just absolutely wasn't right. As we walked in, it was almost in disarray. Confusion set in, distractions. I just couldn't get set. I was surprised. You want to flee. And we demanded everybody downstairs and out of there except me and Hump and Greg and Burnett. And Burnett sat in that chair and he just stared absolutely in space. Just stared into space. We begin the spiritual warfare. When I do that, I plead the blood. I call down Michael Archangel. I do everything I can, and I just start praying hard, and I start throwing my energy out. And you want to say this, and it sounds so cheesy to say it. You use your magic. You throw your darkness at it. When I did, we hit Mike with it, and it was all over Mike. Mike has absolutely let this entity in, and it started spinning around the room. And as soon as it got out of Mike and started spinning around the room, we was praying. It was like confusion. The door slammed. And when the door slammed, Burnett jumped up, and he had these big tears coming out of his eyes. I forgot to say that, but he's jumped up, and he's almost like he threw up this information. That it's a little boy, half African-American, half white. The three of the homes was built for the daughter. The 4th daughter got pregnant by the architects that built the home. He was just throwing all this information out, just completely just shot. We began to pray, but the battle was still going on. The spiritual warfare kept going on. It's almost like everything was in standstill. One of the things I forgot, I kind of left out, this to me I think is very, very important to the story, is that when Sarah Beryl, she ran back upstairs when she came to guide us. And I know that when me and Greg and Hump were making our way up there, it seemed like the stairs was never ending. As she raced upstairs, we just couldn't get there. It seemed like it was just on an escalator and we wasn't getting anywhere. It was really just strange. Once the warfare, you go back to the house, once that thing spinning, that door slammed, everything freezes. It's almost to the point that we wasn't really there. We wasn't in that reality anymore. We was completely in a different place. Everything stood still. I couldn't tell you how long it lasted. I couldn't tell you anything. I could just tell you it's absolutely pure evil. And you wasn't afraid, and you feared of death. Death crossed your mind, but it wasn't death in the physical body. It was death in the spiritual body in that battle. We made our way down that hallway. We're still on the 2nd floor. And then the 2nd floor, the door that led downstairs that we came in slammed like it locked us in. I remember praying. I know, David was Catholic growing up, and he kept reciting that prayer over and over and over. And I just remember Hump screaming it out. I remember me and Greg both throwing what we knew at it. We just was giving it all we had to try to deal with it. And then actually everything settles. And the strange thing about this, and Burnett was there, but I can't always pinpoint where he was at because he never was in our reality, if that makes any sense at all. And as I kind of replay it, psychically and energy-wise. I opened a closet, and it was one of these long I call them crawl space closets. And I opened the closet, and I could physically see that little boy, and he had his head down. He raised his head. The little boy didn't. It wasn't. It wasn't like it wasn't the black-eyed little boy, as you would say. He looked up, but it wasn't the little boy. And I was just hit by this unbelievable. It's almost to the equivalent as I inhaled flames, and sin, and all this stuff, and it completely knocked me down. And I remember almost like playing football where it knocks the wind out of you and you couldn't catch your breath and you're kind of huffing and puffing and trying to get that breath. And I remember the commotion, and it sounded like there was 1,000 people out there banging garbage cans. Psychically, I was just completely shot. I remember Hump and Greg got me up, and we continued to pray, continually doing the battle. And all of a sudden, it just released. It was gone. And I remember that room, we were still in our reality, where we wasn't in any time period. There was absolutely no such thing as time. So many times when I go around and speech, I said, earthbound spirits, and I don't have any realization of the time period or what time it is. That's exactly what it was. It was almost like we was ghosts fighting this fight. As we did the battle, and as we done that, and it left, the room filled full of crosses. And I remember so distinctly that when I looked at Burnett and I looked at Hump, it was almost like we was kids again. It was something about our innocence, and as our innocence was there in that reality, in that realm, our innocence completely faded away, and we could never be those boys again. And I remember us all crying together, and it seemed like no time period, and we actually wept. Me, David, Burnett, and Greg wept. And the room filled through there, and it was the greatest presence, the reality of God and His power and what's really out there, and that our next step would be new people, and it wasn't people that we would be proud of. And we would have to start completely awry. And I remember we made our way downstairs and walked outside to everybody and looked at everybody's faces. It was absolutely sheer fright. It was a reality that said was more than just ghost hunting. It was really an attack on the spiritual body, spiritual mind, the spiritual soul. It was completely something new. That night I lost pretty much all my investigators. Everybody, pretty much. Nobody was ever the same after that night. Burnett wasn't ever the same. David wasn't ever the same. I wasn't ever the same. The next day, one of the things I left out while we was praying and we started raising up, Greg and I, when I got knocked down with that heat, I actually got sprayed with this almost like a pus or a grease thing. It was all over my glasses and my clothes. And Greg didn't have glasses on, and it got in his eyes. He had a double eye infection, pretty much matted closed the next day. He still has problem with his eyes today from it. And myself, I woke up the next morning with double pneumonia in the hospital, and I was in really serious health for the next 2 weeks. It got us. From that point on, I realized that the spiritual battle and the war that I fought that night, that the casualties of that wasn't just me. From me being with my ego, the casualties were the people around me that I loved that had vices stronger than themselves. My marriage fell apart. The people I loved dearly, their vices overtook them. And the world that I knew it completely began again, and I was literally at the crossroads that I enjoy talking about, songs I like to pick. Am I going to let this bring me down and take that path that I should never take, or should I take this path and move forward and stay in this field and fight this good fight of faith? And it was a fight that you commit, a direction you take, but at the same time when you take it, it's a never ending because you're human, and your regrets and your demons come back, and it's a constant battle. And you have to look at the whole picture, and I always do look at the whole picture that night. And it was a night that I really feel like a piece of me died. You hear so many times when you work these dark cases, you come out, you're never the same. A piece of you die. Well, that night it completely took away any innocence we've ever had, and it completely stripped us down. And it taught me that the things that I do in this field, the abilities and the things that I can do, it's not me, it's all God. And whenever you take it to you, the enemy's going to recognize that just as God does, and he's going to come after you. And he's going to get you if you're not careful. And that's what happened to me that night. And I took a realization of the man I needed to be. I knew the long road it would be. And I knew what the path it was going to be on. And that's why I preach so much about spiritual responsibility. And I tell you, if you're on board with this team, you're gonna have to take care of yourself, because the realization is doing that. And it was an event and a night that I can never forget. It's imprinted in my mind, my heart, my soul, and it's something that I can't believe we're kind of reliving again after all these years. And it hadn't been all that years. It seems like forever, but it was in 2007.
This was one of the first investigations actually I had gone on with Shawn. I knew the attorneys and his wife, and I used to take piano lessons in this house, so I wanted to go. It seemed like a dollhouse. It was just a beautiful, little, quaint, peaceful house. So I was talking to the attorney and his wife, and the investigators were outside. All of a sudden, we hear banging on the doors, and the investigators had been locked out. So we had to go let them in. So we come inside, and like I said, the house was a peaceful feeling. The second floor door was locked. But then all of a sudden, it wasn't locked anymore, so we investigated upstairs. I was upstairs with Burnett and 3 or 4 other investigators. At that time, we began trying to call on the spirit and talk to it, and we realized it was a little boy, a biracial child. And so I told the child, I said, just let us know that you're here, make your spirit known, and let us know what you want and why you're here. And about that time, Burnett went almost into a trance. The girl that was sitting beside me, she said, look at my back's burning, and she had been scratched across her back. I was scratched on my leg. At that time, I told him, I said, somebody needs to go get Shawn. So Shawn and them come upstairs, and as they reach the top of the stairs, they realize what's going on, and he said, y'all need to get out of here now. So we started out downstairs, and it was like you couldn't breathe. It was just closing in on you. You couldn't, the whole atmosphere changed, and it was a feeling like I'd never experienced or ever want to experience again. We all went downstairs, and Shawn told us, said, open all the doors, and he said, start praying. So we tried to open the doors, and the doors wouldn't open. So we were all at the foot of the stairs, and we all just started praying. I could hear doors slamming. There was growling, and I could hear Shawn and all of them praying, just praying to the top of their lungs, and things just slamming upstairs. And at that point, I was scared, and then they hollered out, said, y'all get out of here. So we tried to get out. We kept pulling the doors. Finally, we forced the doors open, and we were able to get outside, and then the atmosphere changed again. As we stood outside, we continued to pray and plead the blood of Jesus. And finally, it seemed like it was an hour or so before it finally quit, and I was actually scared because I could hear the flailings around upstairs and the doors, and I was scared for Shawn, I was scared for Greg. When they come downstairs, they had been sprayed by some type of gooey liquid. Greg's face was covered, Shawn's clothes were covered, and it smelled like sulfur. It had a very distinct odor, and they couldn't, when you'd go around them, it would just be all over you. So everyone was praying and scared, and we continued to be scared as we walked over to the parking lot to get ready to leave. We got the film, the tape, and everything that we had, and we burned it in the parking lot. They said we didn't want to take anything from that place with us, so we burned everything that we had. At that point in time, I resigned. I said, no more investigations for me. I could not stand to see Shawn go through what I had seen him go through. He became sick the very next day and was hospitalized for 2 weeks. Greg's eyes had already begun to matter, and they were red, and he's had problems with his eyes since this date. My personal life, Shawn's personal life, and everybody's from that day forward changed. All I know is something was evil there. You could hear it traveling through the fireplaces from the first floor to the second floor. You could hear the rumblings, and you knew something was there with you. And that whatever was there actually made itself known through Mike Burnett, because he was no longer Mike. He began talking, saying things that Mike wouldn't have known to say. And after the girl, I think her name was Christy, was scratched, I knew that we had to have someone come upstairs that knew more about it than what we did.
Shawn, for the longest, wanted to investigate this home because of his mother, as a young child, having piano lessons there. Rich history in Montgomery, downtown area. The story of the president of the bank building a few houses for his daughters. Big folklore stories of the building of Montgomery. Shawn was fascinated by the history and the home itself. He had mentioned to us that he wanted to investigate it. And he contacted the case manager. The case manager contacted them, and it was like, we need you to come right now. And it went from Thursday to we're doing it Friday night. We showed up and did the initial interview with the clients. Broke down into the teams, and the house was warm and friendly, and everybody was excited to be there just because it was that house. So your guard was kind of down. You're just roaming around. You're just thinking it's just another investigation. My perspective of Michael in the middle of the investigation, when it really got really bad, it was not the same person. It was not the same Michael that I've known for the past 28 years. His whole entire body had changed. I've never seen him so pale and crying. He couldn't really speak clearly. He started babbling about things that he was seeing and picking up on. And from what I recollect was little pieces of the puzzle, which you got to remember, we were downstairs and Michael was upstairs, and we knew things and he knew things, but we didn't conversate with each other. So we put that little bit of puzzle together, but it was not the same Michael at all. When one of our investigators come downstairs running to get Shawn, which me, Shawn, and Greg were downstairs sitting in another room, needing us to come right then. I mean, just absolutely terrified for us to get up there. Going out of the room, going down the hallway to the staircase I felt very, very different. The whole house had changed by then. And going up them stairs was like, it seemed like a long time getting up 2 flights of stairs. It really did. Something that would probably take 6 seconds seemed like it took 2 minutes, Jake. When we got to the top, I never realized that my life was going to completely change. Because when you walk through that door, you had to realize, is this really what you want to do? I mean, do you want to spend your time and efforts and your labor in this field of research? You had to make a choice, and that choice was made that night. You got to see the realest form of evil that a human could ever see in their life. If you wanted to see what hell was like, we got to see it for about an hour and a half. Once it showed itself, everybody wants to say they see a shadow figure and they see this shadow man. Well, what we saw was a shadow figure, or it was an object bouncing from wall to wall to wall. It was like you threw a rubber ball in the room, but it was a black mass bouncing from room to room to room. The air had changed. I was completely soaking wet with sweat by that time. And when you can see it with your own eyes, and you're like, wow, I'm finally getting to experience this, but it's also the darkest that somebody could ever experience. You have to find that opening to let let God in to cover yourself with that armor and protect yourself and protect your friends. But you can't protect everybody else. You have to do it individually.
Shadow or
I saw what appeared to me as maybe 4 foot, like a 4 foot little, like a Tasmanian devil is what I've always called it. The old cartoons of the Tasmanian devil spinning around and around and around, bouncing from wall to wall to wall. That's exactly what it looked like. Completely dark mass. I would never forget it. On my end, I did a lot of praying. Shawn had tried to really, he got mad with it. We all got, at that time, got really mad because we wanted it gone. We wanted all this to go away.
did you curse at it? Did you shout at it? What did you do?
You know, I screamed at one time, and I was like, "Oh Lord God, please help us." And I've never done that in my life. I actually physically screamed, and by that time, Shawn had opened the closet door, and it seemed like it come out when it knocked him to the ground. It completely just left. It was like a vacuum effect. It was like a windstorm, a lightning storm, windstorm went right past you within a few milliseconds. Loud thunder crashing sounds, wind blowing, and it just went whoosh. And you hear the glass windows shaking and vibrating. Then you took a few seconds to get your composure and gain your sense. And all of a sudden, it seemed like the gates of heaven completely filled the room up. Not only with the scent of flowers and sweet smells and fresh aromas, but hundreds and hundreds of shadow crosses in this room. Our office built, it's an office room. A little bit bigger than a normal room. Hundreds all over the place. Through the windows, through the walls. And it felt good because you could breathe.
Well, let's see, heck, it was probably about 2 years ago, Shawn called me and told me that there was a house downtown that we had definitely been looking into for a couple of months, heck, maybe even years, of trying to get into, and had the possibility of getting into it. He asked me if I would be interested in going with him and the team and looking into it and seeing what we could figure out about it, and the unique history surrounding the house, from a picture being taken out of the house being brought back, and the troubles that people have had with certain items being taken out of the house in their possession and then bringing it back because of the bad luck they've had. So, of course, when he called, I was definitely interested in it. This is something that we have done for years and as kids and grew up doing, and just really evolved throughout the years. So, of course, I said I'll go, and we decided to meet up, I believe it was one Friday night, and get our thoughts together before we went in, and we all met up downtown Montgomery, and never in a million years would I've imagined experiencing what I experienced that year. That night, everything, that whole year was brought to complex with that one investigation, I think, especially for me. Any type of, I guess you could say, speculations, if I ever needed any clarification of what we were doing was the right thing to be doing, or if I really doubted myself or anything about what we do, it all came to light that night in that one establishment. From the time we walked in to the time we left, numerous hours passed, but just the whole experience itself, I took away from that night not only a different outlook on what we're doing, but a different outlook both spiritually and as far as my outlook on being a team, a part of a great team, and being a member of SPR. Just to start off, I can honestly say that when you got to the establishment, from the time we sat outside, knowing that, okay, there is a possibility we might get something here tonight. There's a possibility we might not. It started off as just a normal investigation, a normal night for us, the laughing, the cutting up before we go in, the family, just a family camaraderie that we all have, being brothers and the other team members that had joined us at that time for the investigation, even having, Shawn's mom was with us and other family members. It started off as a normal night and a normal investigation. I know speaking for myself and from the experience that we had that night, I do not believe that any of us would have imagined what took place, and definitely not the outcome. I can say it was an experience that left me dumbfounded, left me looking for answers, and definitely left me sleeping with a light on for a couple of nights. But starting off, the team went in, Shawn went in with other team members and sat down and talked to the people that were actually letting us investigate the place for the night, while the rest of us sat outside. And as we sat outside, we talked about numerous things pertaining to nothing about the investigation. After Shawn and the others came back out from speaking with the owners, and Deborah came out with Shawn, and Shawn decided to let a couple at a time go in, walk the establishment. And one thing that we were told was that we would not be able to go upstairs, that it was locked off and there was nothing that, we could do about it. And of course, being who we are, they kind of, drew our curiosity, what's up there, what could be up there. And of course, we knew we wouldn't at that time be able to go up, but it's probably 2 or 3 at a time. I know I was with 2 other people. Shawn said, go in, get a feel of the place. If you want to do some readings, do some readings. Jot down notes of what you think, what you feel, what you experience. Come back out, and we'll regroup. So probably a good 45 minutes or an hour went by in each little group. I think maybe it was 3 groups in all. I think we had maybe a team of 9 there. Went in, walked around, discussed it with each other as far as who was in your group, and that was it. As far as discussing anything else with anyone else, we didn't do that. We held it till the end of the night. But needless to say, by the end of the night, I don't think anybody needed to know what each other felt at the beginning. So once that was completed, we broke up into teams. I think we actually had 2 teams, might have had 3 at the most. I want to say it was 2 teams, and one team did one side of the establishment while the other team did, of course, the opposite side. And I remember specifically having, when we first started, I had 4 team members, including myself with me. And just from the time we first walked in to do the initial tour to the time that we started the investigation, one thing that stood out, one thing that really just kind of threw itself at me, and later on I found out threw itself out at a lot of people, was a picture. To be honest, the picture just felt like it had something drawn to it, that it was there for a reason. It had something to do with the house, the establishment, and that whole thing is what I centered myself around. Why? What did it have to do? And later on found out that picture had actually been removed from the house. A story went with the picture, and some unexpected circumstances happened to the people that took the picture, and they actually brought it back and gave it back to the people that was owning the house. We started off, I can remember, if you came through the back, we started off in the first room to your right, did some EVP sessions. Really, to be honest, I can remember not getting anything. It was just kind of calm, but the main thing that kept standing out was the picture in the hallway that was behind me. We sat in there for a good 30, 45 minutes, really didn't pick up on anything, really nothing to focus on. So I remember Shawn calling everybody back together and kind of swapping sides. Let one team go back to the back of the establishment, another team go to the front of the establishment. And I can remember the second point that we started doing some EVP sessions. The teams kind of combined a little bit. Now I believe we narrowed it down to 2 teams. So we roughly had, I think, about 5 people in each team. And I can remember me, 3 other team members, Deborah, Shawn's mom, we was all in the, I guess you could say, the main room if you came through the front door to your right. And I can remember pretty much it was such a calm night that it was such an easy feeling laying on the floor. To be honest, I even started dozing off a few times, and it was just that calm. You had that easy feeling. You had that home feeling. And I can remember a few of us talking, saying, there's nothing here. There is nothing here. This is probably one of the most lackluster, for many words to use, investigations we've done in a while. Great experience as far as being together and working on our technology and working on our trades. But as far as getting anything, it was nothing there. However, as you were laying on the floor, and I remember laying on the floor, I kept just had something else stick out in my mind, something else kind of poking you and letting you know, and it was just something about the fireplace. You got an uneasy feeling about the fireplace. And when I mentioned it to the team I was with, I wasn't the only one. There was a couple others said, it's just everything else feels calm, but the fireplace itself just doesn't feel right. Well, about another hour had gone by, so we're probably a good 2.5, 3 hours into the investigation now. Shawn called everybody together. We was all sitting down, I guess you'd call it the parlor, and pretty much just talking. Everybody felt like we could all probably took sleeping bags, laid in and slept the night at that time. We didn't feel anything, and it was just, to be honest, it was a great experience for us at that time as far as we got to go to an establishment that we had all been focused on for many years, Shawn and Hump and myself as kids, and a great opportunity, and that's what we was really getting ready to chalk it up at. However, I can't recall who it was, but one of the team members had mentioned something about they just had an uneasy feeling about the staircase. And if you walk through the front door of the establishment, you had the little sitting area to your right, you had the staircase that went straight up. And at the beginning of the investigation, like I said, we were told that, we would love to let you go up there, but it's locked. We're not going to be able to. And we decided to just, being us, walk up the staircase. And as we walked up it, I know Shawn really started getting an uneasy feeling all of a sudden. And I felt like, there's possibility if anything is here, it's up around here. But I still felt like, heck, it was home. I could still take a nap and be easy and sleep through the night. And as we sit on the staircase, I believe it might have been Hump, might have been somebody else, can't recall exactly, but somebody decided just to turn the doorknob. And as they turned the doorknob at the top of the staircase, the door opened. And this was a door that, if memory serves me correctly, was actually locked at the beginning of the investigation. And kind of shocked us all that it was unlocked. And to be told that it's locked and there's, no way we can let you in, we don't have a key. Well, if it opens, that opens another door, another opportunity. We decided to go in. So Shawn, myself, a couple others went in. We made rounds. And Shawn decided to let me and a couple of others, I remember another gentleman and 3 ladies, one including Shawn's mother was with me. He decided to let our group go first upstairs in one of the rooms, and him and his group decided to go downstairs. So we decided to start a little small EVP session, and I remember sitting in one of the rooms, and there was a desk in the room, and in this room was also a nice shower-type room, and I was sitting at the desk, and one of the ladies was sitting on the floor next to me, and a gentleman next to her, and another lady across the desk, and Shawn's mom was sitting in the corner. And we started the EVP session. At that time, it still felt very comfortable, very lackluster, and I can even remember at one point kind of nodding. It had been a rough day, and like I said, all throughout this night now, we still haven't felt anything. If you can recall, at the beginning, when we went to the second room, I remember laying on the floor, laying up against the fireplace. Behind this desk where one of the team members was sitting was another fireplace. And if you stopped and thought about it, this fireplace ran along the outer exterior wall down to the other fireplace where I was lying. As she was doing the EVPs, like I said, I still didn't really feel like there was anything going on that night. And Shawn and his team was downstairs. And probably about 20 minutes into it, one of the team members that was sitting next to me on the floor just gasped, like something had happened. And she made the comment that she felt like something had touched her. And I remember looking over like, what could have possibly touched you? Didn't say anything. I just sit there for a moment. A couple of seconds later, she said it again. Something had scratched me. So I turned around and I said, well, turn around. And she pulled the back of her shirt up. And when she did, she had what appeared to be at that time 3 marks across the lower part of her back where it looked like somebody had just walked behind her and scratched. And that immediately got my attention. So this calm, easy feeling is now starting to deteriorate, and that, hey, maybe we do have something different. Maybe there's a reason this door was locked and now it's unlocked. And one of the ladies actually had the dowsing rods, and as she kept asking questions, more activities began with the dowsing rods. Now my attention is really, really getting perked, and I'm really starting to, feel like, well, hey, there's something here. Maybe we can figure out what's going on. And as she kept asking questions, I can remember getting this feeling just like something was really trying to communicate with me, was really trying to get focused, wanted me to focus on it. And I remember the feeling coming from behind me, sort of like coming from the room that had the shower, that had the large, nice, big room that later on we found out was actually, if I'm not mistaken, possibly a playroom back in the days when the house was first built. And as we kept asking questions, it got brought up that a question got brought up about possibly of a child being in the room. And immediately, it was like something took my focus, and I can remember sitting in the chair, looking at the desk, and seeing to my left, feeling like a young, very young, maybe 4 to 5 year old child had come out of the room behind me and was standing just maybe 3 to 4 feet to the left of me at the desk looking at me. And I can remember looking at the team member across that was asking questions, saying, he's standing right there. And she looked and said, what? And I said, he is standing right here. I can see him. And it was like he wanted me to recognize him. He wanted me to communicate with him. And she said, well, let me play. I want to play. And immediately, out of my words, I remember saying, no, he doesn't want to play. He doesn't want to have anything to do. He just, leave him alone. And I could picture him as though he was standing there, as though my own son was standing there. And as she kept asking questions, he wasn't even focused on what she was asking. Immediately, I was told that after saying that, I became very pale looking, and I can remember just mainly concentrating on this young boy and trying to figure out, what is it you want from me? What is it about me? And really not being able to focus on what he wanted, but I could tell it was something for me. And undoubtedly, me concentrating with him and my experience with him took me away, because I did not feel like anybody else was in the room or in the house with me. I felt like it was just me and him. And I remember hearing Shawn's mother go, Mike, are you okay? Are you okay? But I couldn't respond. I couldn't say anything. And I remember her saying, y'all, let's go get Shawn and get the rest of them. And just immediately not being able to respond. It didn't feel like it was myself, but I remember saying, no, let them be. And she looked at me. And they said my eyes had glazed over. I was staring at her, and she immediately told the team members, go get Shawn. And I can remember Shawn and Hump coming up, and at the same time I could still see this little child, this little boy. And Shawn and Hump and Greg came up, and immediately when they came up, this child disappears. Now, going back, as the child was there, the easy feeling was there. But when Shawn and Hump and Greg got there, I remember Shawn telling everybody else to leave, go downstairs. And I can remember Shawn looking at me saying, you okay? You okay? Burnett, you okay? And finally I remember saying, yeah, I'm just tired. I'm weak. I don't know what's going on. And Greg asked me to tell Shawn what I saw. And Greg and Hump was where they could not hear me, and me and Shawn was in a different location, and I told him. So he come back, and Shawn had this look on his face like, wow. And Greg said, what is it? And Shawn said, tell him what you told me. And Greg said, if you're feeling anything I felt, it's a young boy, I think Greg said between 5 and 6. I can remember, the outfit he had on was kind of like the burlap hat, the burlap pants. And it was what Greg was saying was exactly what I had described to Shawn. And Shawn said, we really need to focus on that. So David actually went and sat behind the desk in the chair that the lady was sitting in. I stayed in my chair. And Greg was off in the corner, and Shawn was sitting next to me. Well, Shawn told me to go ahead and try to focus again on the kid. Greg tried to focus on the little boy, and Shawn started trying to talk to him. And as we were sitting there talking to him, I could see the boy walking around the room, but he wouldn't go. He would walk from one side behind us, out of the corner of my eye, walk to the other side around Shawn, almost to Greg, but he would not go behind David. He would not go anywhere near that fireplace. And I can remember Hump saying, "Guys, something don't feel right. There's something behind me." And about that time, you got this smell of what smelled like sulfur. It was a bad smell. And I can remember the little boy wanting to go behind David. He was wanting something from us, but he wouldn't. It was like he was scared. And I remember going to the right toward the door that exited the room and standing there. And as I'm saying it now, I can see it as though it's happening right now. It was like he just started crying. And Greg said he's scared. Greg said something's wrong. And as we kept talking, that smell got stronger. And I can remember Hump getting closer to the desk, like he was trying to get away from the fireplace. And just out of a short second, Shawn stood up, looked behind Hump, and said, "I demand that you show yourself now." And that moment, at that exact moment, is when my whole experience through everything we've done, from kids to starting off at Bear Creek Swamp to then changed, because I experienced something at that moment that I had never, ever really faced in my life. And it proved a point to us that night that you can never let your guard down. You can never think that there's nothing there and you're comfortable. Because when Shawn said that, this dark, demonic, dog-looking thing jumped up from behind Hump onto the desk, almost knocked Shawn over. The door swung open and went out the door. Shawn jumped up, Greg jumped up, Hump jumped up, and Shawn said, "Guys, we've got something on our hands. We're going to have to go. We're going to have to do something." And when I went to get up, I collapsed. I remember Greg and Shawn grabbing me, and I said, "I can't move. I can't go out the door." Whatever I had experienced with the little boy, whatever was going on, would not let me out that door. And Shawn helped me, Greg helped me, David helped me. And finally, I got my strength up, and Shawn said, "All right, he's up here. He's somewhere here. We got to get him." And Shawn said, "Look, Burnett, start reciting Bible scriptures. You've done it all your life. Start." And for some reason, at the most needed time in my life to start reciting and to help my brothers out and to help my team out, I couldn't. There was only one that I could keep saying, and that was John 3:16. But any others out of hundreds I had memorized as a child could not come. I couldn't remember Psalms. I couldn't remember anything, just John 3:16. So I started reciting as much as I could. And I remember going with Greg into one of the rooms, and I remember hearing Shawn yell, "There he goes, there he goes." And immediately, Shawn went to another room that was adjacent to the room we originally been in. And I remember us going to be with Shawn, and it was like whenever we got close to whatever this figure was, it just kept bouncing. It was like he didn't want to leave. He knew it was there. He knew if we got him that he was going to leave. And Greg had mentioned that he felt like the little boy wanted to leave. He was ready to go on, pass over. But whatever this thing, whatever this dark figure was not going to allow him to go. And we kept searching, and a couple of seconds later, you would catch it out of the corner of your eye, bounce into another room. And finally, we lost it. We could not find it, but we knew he was still up there. And the smell had just gotten stronger through this length of time. It got to the point where you could barely smell it. And what I mean by you couldn't bear it. It was just, it would make you sick. And finally, Shawn just stopped. He said, he's in there. And there was a closet, and there was a door. And Shawn said, he's in there. And we were standing, and Shawn was in front of us. It was Hump, myself, and Greg. We were behind Shawn. And Greg had this black, I don't know what type of material it was made out of, but he had his black, long coat on. And Shawn had his glasses on. And I remember about the time Shawn opened the door, this thing jumps out, knocks Shawn down, and sprays this mist. I mean, when it was over, we turned around, helped him. We had to get Shawn up. Greg was covered in what looked to be like just a wet mist from his head down his jacket all the way to his shoes. And Shawn's, you could just tell he was sick. And he said, he's gone. He said, he's gone. And as you heard Shawn say he's gone, you felt this wind go down the stairs. You heard the front door down in the bottom parlor open and slam. And as this is going on, all the other team members were either downstairs or outside, and they had been praying. Shawn told them, go out there, and all you can do is pray for us. And immediately when Shawn said, it's gone, it's over, the sulfur smell ended. You had the smell of flowers. And we looked, and it's like on this oil painting was a cross. And all of a sudden, throughout all three of these rooms that were adjacent was crosses all over the wall, the ceiling, the floor. It was just projected all over the place. And you had this calm feeling. We sit there for a moment. I remember Shawn, was at all. I was in tears. Greg was just, his eyes had already started turning red from whatever mist was. And Hump was trying to make sure everybody was okay. We go downstairs, and they're all asking us, what happened. Shawn said, I don't want to discuss it. We're not going to discuss it. Let's wrap it up. Let's do what we got to do. Let's get out of here. So we got our equipment together. We wrapped it up, and we all went across the street to the parking lot. And as we were sitting there, the four of us, Greg, myself, Shawn, and Hump, we were sitting on the vehicles just shaking our heads, and everybody was wanting to know what happened. And I can remember Shawn looking at everybody and saying, give me everything you got. Any type of video, any type of tapes, give it to me now. And as we gave Shawn the videos, he looked at all of us, he said, destroy it. He said, we just learned a valuable lesson tonight. And that lesson was, at the beginning, nobody felt anything. Everybody felt comfortable, and we let our guard down. And when we let our guard down, we allowed this dark figure to take over. And if it hadn't been the strength as a team, it hadn't been the strength and the things we learned as kids and the things that family members had instilled with us, that would have been a battle that, to be honest with you, we would have lost. I can remember going home, and the next day didn't even want to talk about it. Shawn and I talked on the phone, Hump and I talked on the phone, and it was like, we don't want to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it. A couple of days later, come to find out, Greg was in the hospital with an infection in his eye they couldn't determine. Shawn got put in with an infection in his lungs, and still to this day, I believe it's contributed to whatever was sprayed upon both of them when he came out of that closet. But that night, I grew spiritually. I grew. I always trusted my brothers, but I think we grew as a team. We grew stronger together. We realized that we had to depend on each other a lot stronger than what we already did. And it also made us all focus that each one of us brought a different aspect to the table. And it took each and every one of us, not only the four of us, but the team members downstairs to control this, to win this battle. And we knew right then and there that we had to regroup, and as a team we did. That night will always be, even up to this moment, probably the most or the best experience as far as having to deal with something I've had in my lifetime, from going back to our childhood to the investigations we've had at Bryce and other places. That right there really, I think, turned my focus, made my faith stronger, and really became a part of SBR. And it's something that I will never forget, and it's an experience that I think we all will remember for a lifetime.